So hello and welcome back to yet another video. So this video is kind of like a follow-up to the previous one, which was based on dealing with setbacks. So if you haven't watched that one yet, I definitely recommend that you go and check that one out first, because it will just create like a really good base for which then you can build this stuff on top of. So in general, it's always good to keep goals up to date, but now is especially a good time to just review or reset, since I'm sure a lot of people's plans and goals have been drastically shifted from the current situation. Or you might just be in a place where you just feel like you haven't really achieved that much this year, which can be kind of demotivating considering the end of the year is coming up. And it would be pretty easy to fall into the trap of just like slugging off the rest of the year too, since you might already feel like you're on that train. So if this is the case, I definitely encourage you to try and switch your perspectives a little bit. Like, yes, the majority of the year has already passed, but we still have a whole 3 months left. It might not seem that much, but you'd be really surprised how much you can actually get done in a short amount of time if you do it right and put your mind to it. And if you still can't bring yourself to that point, please don't feel frustrated or feel bad about yourself. Like, it's been one heck of a year. You really can't blame yourself for it. You know, like, we're all human. It's just the situation has affected everyone differently. Like, obviously, like, some worse than others, but it's just like a lot of different situations. It's not one that you should feel like you have to compare yourself to other people who have maybe been doing better. It's just really important to remind yourself that any progress is progress, even if it is just a step or two, or even if it's just starting to get yourself back up on your feet and building that productive mindset now, so that when it comes around to the new year and you set your new goals, if that's something that you do, you're already prepared to take on the next year, rather than like only starting to try and do that at the start of next year. So you might not be achieving like any of the big goals that you set for this year, but at least you are still achieving something by getting ready to achieve stuff, if that makes any sense. But yeah, so once again, these things that I'll be talking about can be used in so many different situations. I'll probably just connect them more to how I've been resetting my goals after experiencing setbacks. So first and foremost, just do a quick check to see if your goals still apply to you, or whether it's something that you actually still want to work towards. If it happens to now be something pretty irrelevant or just something that doesn't interest you anymore, consider removing it or changing it to save you a lot of time and energy. Or if it's something that's in between the two, perhaps consider the priority of this goal to you, which is my next point. So perhaps there are just now other goals which mean a lot more to you than what that one does, but nonetheless it's still something that you would like to work towards. So if this is the case, once you've worked out what all of your goals are, take a look and work out which of the goals mean the most to you, like which ones are the biggest priority to you, and then perhaps consider allocating a little bit less time to the goals that matter the least to you, and then the most time and effort to the goals that mean the most to you. Or another thing which this might just affect as well is that the timeline of the goals that mean less to you might just be much longer than what the higher priority goals are, which kind of relates to my next step, which is where I try to set new timelines for the goals. This really depends on the situation of how well you can judge. Like, at the moment it is super hard if it's something that was due to the current situation in the world at the moment. So like, first I postponed it only like a little bit, and then I almost had to like double the time that I had postponed it, and who knows if I'll even be able to do it then still. But I feel like in a lot of cases the setback won't be quite as drastic as that, or it might be a little bit easier to judge when a realistic timeline is for you to achieve it. Okay, so now we have reviewed our existing goals. If you're all good and satisfied with that, then don't try and push yourself to add more on top of that. But if you still feel like you're missing something, or you didn't have too many goals to begin with, or you just kind of like want to see what other possibilities there might be, in this next section I'll talk about some possible ways to find new goals. This also might help you to view the setback, if that is what you're applying it to, as more of an opportunity, since you'll be able to make something more out of it. So my first way is to use the positives from the setbacks that you found in part 1 of this 2-part series, and set goals based around that if it applies. So like for me, one of the things is that it gave me more time for me to do something, but things might not seem as they might originally. So at first thought, someone who had found this positive may think it just means that they could be at a much higher level, or to have that thing done to a much better quality. But for some, this might not actually be what they're necessarily aiming for. Like, if it is, then like good for you can like just keep working and like get better at it. But if you don't really care too much about that part of it, then there are other ways that you can go around this positive. So like for me, while it would be nice to have this thing at a higher level, it actually feels pretty low in priority compared to all of the other goals I have at the moment. So now I kind of see this as an opportunity to be able to dial the time that I spend on this thing back a little bit, and then use that time and energy to put into the other goals which I want to work towards more. But then still setting goals when it comes to this kind of thing is still super important, so that you don't just like completely drop it off the edge of the earth. Like, you don't want to like then become too slack and then achieve nothing, even though you had all that much more time. So basically, long story short, this not only includes working out what I want to have achieved by the timeline and what I will need to get there, but then I also need to work on my other goals around this one, as now I have much more time that I can add to them. So my next point also works off what I talked about in part 1, where if it applies, to work through your brain dump. So like, look for the patterns of things that bothered you or that you were the most displeased with yourself. You could use these things as areas of improvement to set your goals around. And some things might take a few rounds of different goals to actually see improvement. So just don't get discouraged and keep trying to work at it from different angles. Like, it might seem like a lot of work, but it will pay off in the end. Not only from the result, but the feeling that you get, taking control and putting in the effort and sticking by it. And then also remember to not only look at the negatives, but the positives of the things that made you happy when you did them, or that made you feel more inspired or stuff like that. And then set some goals around that to make sure that you keep on doing those things. Just because like the human brain kind of like has a tendency to like only look at the negatives. So don't try and make yourself happy by trying to get rid of the negatives, but then putting aside all the positives that you do already have. Because then the positives will turn negative and then the negatives will turn positives, and you're just like gonna end up in this cycle of never going anywhere. So make sure that you nurture both and don't neglect either. So this next point kind of depends on what works best for you. Currently, I've just been kind of keeping it in the back of my mind where I can subconsciously just kind of think about it, and sometimes something might just like pop out of nowhere. But nothing much has really come out of doing that yet for me. So sometimes I would really like to take the time to like properly sit down and work through and brainstorm a bunch of different ideas or like possibilities that I haven't even considered in the first place. So with this, just like really try and think outside of the box and get creative with it and write down the craziest of ideas. Like, don't think that anything is too stupid, just like write it all down there, because you might find new things from those things even if you do think that they're kind of crazy. Like, I'm saying all this like so broadly because like I said, it can work with so many different situations. Just brainstorming in general, like no idea is stupid, an idea is just an idea. And I kind of want to keep it vague because then it just leaves it up to interpretation of what it means to you. So overall, it's important to set something up that allows you to keep accountable. Like, it's easy enough to just say, I want to achieve this by this time. But for a lot of goals, especially if they're like year-long ones, it's important to break down what that actually means and what you would have needed to have gained for you to consider having achieved that goal. So setting up little checkpoints of accountability over the timeline that you have set yourself of things that you can actually measure are super important for keeping you on track and giving you feedback on what you might have to do differently or what you're doing well, or just like how your progress is going. So this might be like set numbers or times or just anything a bit more concrete rather than something that's just completely abstract. Or you could even ask a friend or someone else to help keep you accountable for something. You know, like I said, this will not only keep you on track, but it can just also just like help to break down big goals into smaller chunks, which makes it seem a lot more achievable and gives you motivation, not only the fact that it seems achievable, but then when you get to these checkpoints, you're reminded of how far you've actually come from the beginning. So you're like, well, I've made it this far, surely I can just like keep growing and like I can actually do this. And another thing that I kind of just wanted to quickly slide in here was something that I heard from a podcast. I can't for the life of me remember which one it was, so I can't give proper credit to it, but this isn't like something that I came up with or anything like that. But it's basically just a strategy where if you're just feeling totally dead and unproductive and you just don't want to do anything instead just lay there and be a blob, you know, like you just have no motivation, everything just seems too hard kind of thing, to just kind of count to 3 and get up. It doesn't matter whether you do the thing which you know that you need to do once you get up, just as long as you like get up and start moving around, and it will just bring you that one step closer to actually starting to do the thing that you need to do. It's kind of just like the science thing where like something in motion will stay in motion. So just like getting that motion going, it will just keep going and you will eventually do the thing that you need to do. Or if not, you just do something else productive and it might make you feel a bit better, and I don't know, but basically just like 1, 2, 3, get up, just do something besides just sitting there. Yes. Well, I think that's all that I have to say in this video and the end of this 2-part series. Unless I think of like other things that I want to add on top of it or like later, I don't know. But that's all that I have to say for now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some tips out of these videos, whether it was something to do with setbacks or if it's just like, I don't know, overall motivation, or like I said, it can apply to so many different things. So, but yes, thank you so much for watching and I'll just see you guys in the next video. Bye!